Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you a question. How many times have you had the right idea, the right answer, the right vision, but the moment you tried to express it, the words just didn't land? You knew what you meant, but people didn't feel it, they didn't see it, they didn't follow it. Now imagine if every time you spoke, your words cut through the noise like a blade, leaving no confusion, no doubt, only clarity, impact, and influence. That ability would put you ahead of 99% of people, because in a world drowning in noise, the one who speaks with precision will always be the one who gets heard. Have you ever sat in a room, listening to someone speak, and found yourself captivated not because of what they said, but because of how they said it? Their words flowed like water, each sentence clear, sharp, and unshakable. You leaned in, not wanting to miss a single detail, because they had the rare ability to articulate their thoughts with precision. That ability is not magic. It's not a talent reserved for a few chosen people. It's a skill, and when you master it, you will instantly stand out, because most people fumble with their words, speak in circles, or hide behind filler and fluff. If you learn to articulate your thoughts more clearly than 99% of people, you'll notice doors opening, respect rising, and influence growing in ways you never imagined. Clarity begins in the mind. Before words ever leave your mouth, they live in your thoughts. And here's the truth most people overlook. If your thinking is messy, your speaking will be messy. People who struggle to articulate themselves often don't have clarity about what they actually believe, feel, or want to say. They rush into speaking before truly understanding their own point. So the first step to being articulate is slowing down enough to organize your thoughts. Ask yourself, what do I really want to say? What's the key core message here? If you cannot summarize your point in a single sentence in your head, you're not ready to say it out loud. Simplicity is power, and clarity is born from stripping away the noise. Think of the people who inspire you most. They don't speak in complicated jargon or overwhelm you with a flood of information. They distill big ideas into sharp, digestible insights. They make complex things simple without ever dumbing them down. That's what articulation is. The ability to take the chaos in your mind and present it in a way that makes sense to everyone else. Imagine how powerful it would be if you could consistently take your ideas, no matter how complex, and present them with such clarity that people not only understand, but remember them. That's how you separate yourself from the 99%. One of the most common mistakes people make is using too many words to cover up uncertainty. They add filler phrases like, or like, because they're searching for direction mid-sentence. Those fillers dilute your message and weaken your authority. Every time you open your mouth, you're sending signals about your confidence and intelligence. Do you sound like someone who knows exactly what they mean, or like someone scrambling to figure it out as they go? If you want to speak clearly, start valuing silence. Take a pause before you answer. Those few seconds of stillness will give you space to line up your thoughts, and when you finally speak, your words will carry weight. Silence, when used with intention, is not weakness, it's strength. The tone of your voice matters just as much as the words you choose. Think about it. The exact same sentence can either inspire or fall flat, depending on how it's delivered. Your voice should match your intention. Speak with conviction when you want to persuade. Lower your pace when you want people to reflect. Raise your energy when you want to ignite passion. People don't just hear your words, they feel them. If your delivery lacks emotion, it doesn't matter how intelligent your words are. Communication is not only logic, it's also rhythm, tone, and presence. Learn to use your voice as a tool of influence. Another key to being articulate is building a strong vocabulary, not to sound fancy or show off, but to give yourself the ability to choose the exact word that fits your thought. Words are tools. If you only carry a few blunt tools, your expression will always feel limited. But when you expand your vocabulary, you gain precision. Instead of saying something is good, you might call it transformative, insightful, or life-changing. Each word paints a sharper picture and evokes a stronger response. But here's the catch. Don't chase big words for the sake of sounding smart. The goal is not complexity. The goal is accuracy. Choose words that bring your thoughts to life with vivid clarity. Your body language is also part of articulation. Words and gestures are inseparable. When your body aligns with your words, your message becomes magnetic. People will trust you more because you're not just speaking from your mouth, you're communicating with your entire presence. Lean in slightly when emphasizing a point. Use your hands to paint the picture of what you're describing and maintain steady eye contact. When your body language reinforces your words, people will not only hear you, but feel the authenticity behind what you say. But articulation isn't only about expressing yourself clearly, it's also about listening. You cannot sharpen your communication if you don't learn to truly hear others. When you listen deeply, you understand what people need, what they fear, and what they value. That understanding allows you to shape your words with greater relevance and impact. Too many people think about their next response instead of absorbing what's being said. Slow down, listen fully, then respond with clarity tailored to the moment. The best communicators are not those who speak the most, they're the ones who connect the deepest. Think about how articulation plays out in real life. In a job interview, you have seconds to make an impression. The way you articulate your strengths will either land you the role or blend you into the background. In a relationship, the way you express your needs will either create understanding or fuel resentment. In leadership, the clarity of your words will either rally people behind you or leave them confused and unmotivated. Every opportunity you want in life depends, in part, on your ability to express yourself in a way that leaves no doubt about who you are and what you stand for. Practice is non-negotiable. You cannot wait until high-pressure moments to figure out how to speak with clarity. You need to rehearse in your daily life. Pay attention to the words you use. Record yourself and listen back. Do you ramble or are you concise? Do you lean on filler words or do you let silence serve as punctuation? Challenge yourself to explain complex ideas in simple terms, as if you were teaching a child. That exercise will reveal how clear your thinking really is. The more you practice, the more natural articulation becomes. Confidence grows from preparation. When you know your material, when you've taken time to reflect, when you've built the habit of clear thinking, your words flow without hesitation. And here's something powerful. People don't remember every detail you say, but they always remember how you made them feel. When you articulate with clarity, people feel safe in your presence. They feel inspired, motivated, and understood. That is influence. That is power. Most people will never master this skill. They'll remain trapped in the fog of unclear thoughts and clumsy speech, blending in with the crowd. But you don't have to. You can make the decision today to train your mind to think early, your words to land with precision, and your presence to command attention. Do that, and you will rise above 99% of people, not because you're louder, not because you're smarter, but because you've mastered the art of clarity. Clarity will always be the edge in every environment where people gather, speak, and compete for influence. The ones who get remembered are not necessarily the ones with the most impressive achievements, but the ones who can articulate those achievements in a way that makes people listen. If you want to rise in your career, in your relationships, in your ability to persuade, then you must treat your voice like a weapon. Sharpen it, train it, and use it with precision. Every time you open your mouth, you are making a statement about who you are. You are either confirming that you are thoughtful, deliberate, and confident, or you are showing that you are scattered, uncertain, and unsure. And people notice. They may not tell you, but they feel it in the pit of their stomach when they hear you speak. Most people underestimate how quickly others make judgments about them. Within the first 30 seconds of hearing your voice, people already decide whether you're someone they want to follow, trust, or dismiss. That's how powerful articulation is. You don't need hours to convince someone. You just need a few well-placed sentences that land with force, clarity, and conviction. And that begins with training yourself to think in terms of impact, not volume. Too many people believe that if they keep talking, eventually they'll say something impressive. But the truth is, the longer you ramble, the more you dilute your authority. Great communicators know that less is often more. One sentence delivered with clarity can hit harder than a 10-minute explanation that wanders in circles. When you begin to value articulation, you start to value discipline. You learn that communication is not just about expressing yourself, it's about responsibility for how your words land. Think about it. Every time you speak, you're planting seeds in the minds of others. Some seeds grow into respect, trust, and admiration. Others grow into doubt, confusion, or dismissal. What you plant depends on the quality of your words, and the quality of your words depends on the clarity of your thoughts. This is why learning to articulate isn't just a professional skill, it's a life skill. It affects every interaction, every opportunity, every relationship you'll ever have. Part of that discipline means practicing brevity. Challenge yourself to explain things in as few words as possible without losing the essence. For example, instead of saying, "I was thinking that maybe if we tried doing this in a slightly different way, it might possibly give us some better results," you could say, "Let's try this approach. It could give us better results." Notice the difference? One is buried in hesitation and unnecessary words. The other is crisp, clear, and confident. When you strip away the excess, your message becomes undeniable. And people respond to that. They lean toward clarity. They respect those who know how to cut through the noise. Another powerful element of articulation is storytelling. Facts inform, but stories persuade. When you wrap your ideas inside a story, you give people something to hold on to. A story creates images in the mind. It makes abstract concepts concrete. For example, if you want to express the importance of persistence, you could list statistics and theories, or you could tell the story of a time you failed, tried again, and finally succeeded. That story not only clarifies your point, it makes people feel it. And when people feel something, they remember it. So when you're speaking, don't just deliver information. Deliver an experience. Let your words paint a picture that stays with them long after the conversation ends. But here's a truth that many people shy away from. Being articulate requires courage, because clarity strips away your excuses. When you articulate your thoughts clearly, you expose exactly what you think, believe, and stand for. That vulnerability can be uncomfortable. It's safer to hide behind vague words, to soften your message, to avoid being pinned down. But safe words don't move people. They don't command respect. The moment you decide to be direct, to speak with clarity, you step into a level of confidence that others can feel. And even if they don't agree with you, they will respect you for saying what you mean without hesitation. This courage is especially important in difficult conversations. Think about how many conflicts in the world, whether between friends, colleagues, or even nations, come from poor communication. People misinterpret, assume, or fail to say what they truly mean. Imagine how different outcomes would be if people mastered the ability to express themselves clearly and listen deeply. When you can articulate your thoughts in moments of tension, you gain control of the situation. Instead of reacting emotionally or speaking recklessly, you anchor yourself in clarity. That steadiness disarms conflict and positions you as the person everyone looks to for direction. Another layer to articulation is adaptability. The way you express your thoughts should shift depending on your audience. If you're speaking to a group of executives, your articulation might be more concise, focused, and formal. If you're explaining something to children, your articulation should be simple, vivid, and engaging. The ability to adapt your words to the listener is what separates good communicators from great ones. It shows emotional intelligence, it shows awareness, and it ensures your message lands, no matter who's listening. Too many people get stuck using the same communication style in every situation. They don't realize that clarity isn't one size fits all. It's about meeting people where they are, then guiding them to where you want them to be. Articulation also thrives on structure. When your words have a beginning, middle, and end, people follow you with ease. Without structure, you lose them halfway through. Think of your message as a journey. You start by setting the stage, then you guide your listener through the main point, and finally, you deliver the takeaway. When you learn to structure your thoughts in this way, you eliminate confusion and maximize impact. People will walk away not only understanding your point, but being able to repeat it to others. That's the ultimate sign of clarity, when your words are so well structured that they spread beyond your own voice. Now let's talk about presence. Presence is the invisible force that makes people stop and listen before you even say a word. It's how you carry yourself, how you breathe, how you hold space in a room. Presence and articulation go hand in hand because even the clearest words will fall flat if you don't deliver them with authority. Stand tall, ground yourself, speak from your chest, not your throat. When your presence communicates confidence, your words naturally carry more weight. And here's the secret. You don't need to be the loudest person in the room. In fact, some of the most articulate people speak quietly, but their presence commands attention because every word feels deliberate, intentional, and necessary. Finally, articulation is about consistency. Anyone can deliver one clear speech or one powerful moment, but to truly rise above 99% of people, you must make articulation a habit. That means holding yourself to a higher standard in every conversation, whether it's a high-stakes negotiation or a casual chat with a friend. Each interaction is practice. Each moment is an opportunity to refine your ability. The more you treat articulati on as a daily discipline, the more natural it becomes. And soon, you'll notice something remarkable. People will start listening more attentively, asking for your opinion more often, and remembering your words long after you've spoken them. When you articulate your thoughts with clarity, you become unforgettable. You stop blending into the background noise of vague and scattered voices. You become the person people quote, the one they reference, the one they look to when direction is needed. And all of this begins not with trying to sound smarter than others, but with committing to think clearly, to strip away the unnecessary, and to speak with deliberate precision. Most people don't realize how much of their influence is lost simply because they don't take ownership of their words. They speak on autopilot, reacting rather than responding, filling the air with words they barely thought about. But those who rise above, those who separate themselves from the crowd, are intentional with everything they say. They understand that every word carries a weight. Words can build bridges or burn them. They can open doors or close them. They can inspire or discourage. And when you learn to articulate with clarity, you stop wasting words. You start speaking in a way that always pushes you forward, never backward. Think about the last time you listened to someone who rambled endlessly. You probably tuned out after a while. You stopped listening not because they weren't intelligent, but because their lack of clarity drained your attention. Now contrast that with someone who spoke with purpose. Every line landed. Every pause mattered. They gave you space to digest their message. That kind of communication doesn't just transfer information, it commands attention. And attention is the most valuable currency in today's world. Everyone is fighting for it, but the people who speak clearly, concisely, and powerfully will always win it. When you commit to becoming more articulate, you're not just improving the way you speak, you're training your brain to think sharper, because the mind and mouth are connected. The clearer you're thinking, the clearer you're speaking. And the more you train yourself to articulate well, the more disciplined your thoughts become. You'll notice that in moments of stress, where most people panic and stumble, you'll be able to slow down, gather your ideas, and deliver them in a way that cuts through chaos. That ability makes you stand out because pressure exposes whether someone has true control of their communication. The articulate person thrives under pressure, while the unprepared crumble. One of the most underrated aspects of articulation is clarity of intent. Before you even speak, ask yourself, why am I saying this? What do I want the listener to walk away with? If you cannot answer that, you'll likely drift into vague, unfocused speech. But when your intent is sharp, your words follow suit. You no longer speak just to fill silence. You speak to achieve an outcome, whether that outcome is to inspire, persuade, comfort, or challenge. The clearer your intent, the sharper your articulation. There's also something magnetic about simplicity. People often think complexity makes them sound smarter, but it usually has the opposite effect. Overly complicated language creates distance between you and your listener. Simplicity, on the other hand, builds connection. It shows that you respect the person enough to make your message easy to understand. That doesn't mean dumbing things down. It means making them digestible. Einstein once said that if you can't explain something simply, you don't understand it well enough. That's the level of mastery you should aim for. Articulation is not about showing off what you know. It's about making what you know meaningful to others. Imagine walking into a negotiation. The room is tense, stakes are high, everyone is waiting to see who takes control of the conversation. Most people will rush into speaking, trying to prove their point first, cluttering the air with too many arguments. But the person who pauses, thinks, and then delivers one crisp, well-structured statement will immediately shift the dynamic. They won't need to say more, because their clarity will cut through all the noise. That's the power of articulation. It doesn't just help you communicate, it helps you control environments, set tones, and influence outcomes without force. Another key aspect is learning to use contrast. When you articulate, it's not just about what you say, it's about how you emphasize differences. Contrast makes your points memorable. For example, instead of saying, communication is important, you could say, poor communication destroys relationships, but clear communication strengthens them. That contrast locks the idea into the listener's mind. It makes your point stick because you've shown both sides. When you learn to use contrast, your articulation becomes sharper, more memorable, and more persuasive. You also have to develop the discipline of removing verbal clutter. Listen to how most people speak, and you'll hear phrases like sort of, and kind of, and I think, maybe, or possibly. These weaken the impact of your message. They tell the listener you're unsure, even if you're not. Strong articulation eliminates that clutter. Instead of saying, I think we should probably try this, you say, we should try this. One version sounds hesitant, the other sounds decisive. And in a world where confidence is currency, decisiveness makes people listen. The way you frame your message also matters. Articulate people understand that words can either shrink or expand possibilities. For example, instead of saying, this will be really hard, you can say, this will be a challenge, but it's an opportunity for growth. The difference lies in framing. Both acknowledge difficulty, but one shuts people down while the other lifts them up. When you train yourself to articulate with empowering frames, you not only make yourself clearer, you also make yourself a source of energy, someone people feel better after listening to. That's how you build influence. Articulation also demands awareness of pace. Some people rush through their words as if they're racing to get them out before they forget. Others drag so slowly that they lose momentum. The sweet spot is intentional pacing. When you want to emphasize something, slow down. When you want to build energy, speed up slightly. Think of articulation like music. It's not just the notes, but the rhythm between them that creates impact. If you master rhythm in your speech, you hold attention effortlessly. Let's also talk about repetition. Most people fear repeating themselves because they think it makes them sound redundant. But repetition, when used strategically, is one of the most powerful tools of articulation. If you want someone to remember something, say it more than once, but in slightly different ways. For example, if your core message is clarity creates influence, you might say it directly, then later reinforce it by saying, the clearer you are, the more people trust and follow you. That repetition locks the idea into memory. It transforms your message from something people hear once to something they carry with them. And then there's alignment. Your words, tone, and body language must align. If you say, I'm confident this will work, but your tone is flat and your shoulders slump, your articulation collapses. People don't just process your words, they process your entire presence. The articulate communicator knows this and ensures their delivery matches their message. When your words, tone, and body are in harmony, your communication feels authentic, and authenticity is magnetic. Being articulate also means knowing when not to speak. Silence is one of the most overlooked tools of powerful communication. Pausing after a strong statement gives people time to absorb it. Holding silence in a negotiation can push others to reveal more. Staying quiet in a heated argument can disarm the other person. Articulate communicators understand that silence is not absence, it's presence. It's the space that gives your words power. But let's not forget that articulation is as much about listening as it is about speaking. When you listen deeply, you gather information that makes your responses more precise. You begin to notice patterns in how people think and feel, and when you respond, you can articulate in a way that speaks directly to what matters most to them. That makes your words not just clear, but deeply relevant. Most people listen only to reply. The articulate communicator listens to understand, then responds with words that cut to the heart of the matter. To build this skill, you need to practice deliberately. Start by recording yourself in everyday conversations. Notice where you ramble, where you hesitate, where you lean on filler words. Then work on stripping those away. Practice summarizing articles or books in 1 or 2 sentences. This will train you to extract the essence of an idea and deliver it concisely. Practice speaking about complex topics in simple terms. Practice pausing before responding. Every repetition sharpens your ability until articulation becomes second nature. And when it does, something remarkable happens. You'll start noticing the way people lean in when you speak. You'll notice how often people quote your words back to you. You'll notice how opportunities come more frequently because clarity creates trust, and trust creates doors. You won't need to fight for attention because your articulation will naturally command it. You won't need to beg for respect because the clarity of your words will earn it. You'll realize that articulation isn't just a communication skill. It's a power that elevates every area of your life. When you reach the point where articulation becomes second nature, you stop fighting to be heard. Instead, people naturally give you their attention because your presence speaks before your words do. That's the invisible power that most people never tap into. They think communication is about volume, about being the loudest voice in the room. But true articulation isn't about loudness, it's about resonance. It's about saying something in such a way that it strikes a chord within people, so much so that your words echo in their minds long after the conversation ends. And the only way to develop that resonance is by being intentional with how you shape and deliver your thoughts. One of the most powerful things you can do is practice distillation. Distillation means taking a complicated idea, stripping it down, and presenting only the essence. Imagine you're handed a book of 500 pages and someone asks you, "What's this about?" Most people will fumble trying to recall details, but the articulate person will deliver a single sentence that captures the soul of it. That ability comes from discipline, forcing yourself to look at complexity and extract clarity. When you master distillation, you make your communication timeless. Because people don't remember everything. They remember the essence. They remember the one line that made them stop and think. And if you can give that to them, you'll always leave an impression. Another overlooked factor in articulation is confidence in your pauses. Most people fear silence. The moment there's a gap in conversation, they rush to fill it with words. But silence, when used well, creates gravity. It shows control. It forces people to process what you just said. Think about great speakers, negotiators, or leaders. They don't just speak, they pause. They let their words breathe. They let silence work as an amplifier. If you want to articulate like the top 1%, you must train yourself to embrace pauses. Speak, pause, let your message sink, then continue. That rhythm is what separates powerful communication from forgettable chatter. The way you handle questions is another test of articulation. Most people get flustered when challenged. They stumble, rush, or drown the listener in a storm of words. But the articulate person welcomes questions because they know questions are opportunities to clarify, not threats. Instead of reacting, they take a moment. They might even repeat the question out loud to buy time and ensure they understood it correctly. Then they answer directly, without dodging, without fluff. That calm, measured approach does more than give clarity. It establishes credibility. It tells people, this is someone who doesn't just speak well when rehearsed, but someone who can handle pressure in the moment. There's also the matter of emotional precision. Being articulate doesn't mean being robotic. It means aligning your words with the right emotions. People connect with authenticity, not perfection. When you're excited, let your words carry energy. When you're serious, let your tone carry weight. When you're empathetic, let your voice soften. Emotional precision makes your words human. And when people feel the human side of your communication, they trust you more. They're not just hearing information, they're connecting with the person behind the words. To articulate clearly, you must also master perspective taking. This means learning to step into the mind of your listener. Ask yourself, how are they seeing the situation? What language resonates with them? What matters most to them? For example, if you're speaking to an analytical thinker, framing your point with logic and data will resonate more. If you're speaking to a visionary, painting a picture of possibilities will connect deeper. Articulation isn't just about speaking clearly to yourself. It's about making sure your clarity lands in the way the listener can absorb. It's the difference between shouting across a canyon and building a bridge that brings someone to your side. And let's not forget the discipline of preparation. The most articulate people don't stumble into conversations hoping to find their words along the way. They prepare. They rehearse key points. They anticipate objections. They think about how to frame their message in advance. That doesn't mean they script every line. It means they're intentional. They know the key themes they want to hit, the essence they want to deliver, and the impact they want to create. Preparation isn't about rigidity. It's about freedom, because when you're prepared, you're free to be present, to listen, and to adapt without losing clarity. But articulation is not only for grand moments, it's for everyday life. It's in the way you explain an idea to your team, the way you tell a story to your friend, the way you express your needs in a relationship. Every one of those interactions is a chance to practice. And when you practice in the small moments, you're ready for the big ones. If you wait until the high-stakes moments to start thinking about how to articulate, you'll be too late. build the muscle daily. Treat every conversation as a training ground. Over time, you'll realize you've elevated yourself to a level where clarity is automatic. An often overlooked truth is that articulation also builds self-respect. When you know you can express your thoughts clearly, you no longer feel the frustration of being misunderstood. You stop walking away from conversations thinking, "I should have said it better." You carry yourself with a quiet confidence because you trust your ability to represent yourself. That confidence radiates, people sense it, and because you respect yourself enough to be clear, others begin respecting you more in return. Articulation also requires courage in telling the truth plainly. Many people twist their words, soften their stance, or hide behind vague language because they're afraid of confrontation. But vague words create confusion, and confusion breeds mistrust. Clarity, even when uncomfortable, builds respect. For example, instead of saying, "I'm not sure this project is going well," you might say, "This project is failing, and here's what we need to do to fix it." One creates doubt, the other creates direction. The articulate person doesn't run from hard truths, they deliver them with clarity and conviction. The practice of articulation will also sharpen your listening to yourself. You'll begin catching your own thought patterns, noticing when you drift into negativity, hesitation, or self-doubt. And because you're more aware of your words, you'll begin replacing weak language with strong language, not just when you speak to others, but also when you speak to yourself. This internal articulation, your self-talk, shapes your mindset. When your internal dialogue is clear, strong, and empowering, your external communication naturally follows. There's something deeply liberating about being articulate. It frees you from the fear of being overlooked, misunderstood, or underestimated. When you speak, you'll know you're not just filling air, you're creating impact. And because your words are intentional, you'll notice how much more influence you carry in every setting. People will begin to look at you differently. They'll start asking for your thoughts in meetings. They'll seek your advice. They'll quote you in conversations. That's when you'll realize articulation isn't about being fancy with words. It's about becoming someone whose voice carries weight. Ultimately, the skill of articulation gives you control over your narrative. You stop letting others define you because you've aired the ability to define yourself. You stop being at the mercy of misunderstandings because you can clarify with precision. You stop feeling powerless in conversations because you know how to guide them with intention. And once you experience that control, you'll never want to go back. Because when your words align with your thoughts and your thoughts align with your actions, you become unstoppable. When your words, your thoughts, and your actions align, something extraordinary happens. You begin to command the room without even trying. People can sense when someone is congruent, when there is no gap between what they think, what they say, and how they carry themselves. That congruence is rare, and it's why articulate people stand out so strongly. They're not scrambling for words. They're not hiding behind vagueness. They're grounded, steady, and certain. That certainty creates trust, and trust is the invisible force that draws people to you again and again. But articulation is not just about trust. It's also about influence. Every day you are either influencing or being influenced. If your words are unclear, you're letting others shape the narrative, set the direction, and define the outcome. But when your articulation is strong, you guide the conversation. You choose the frame, you set the tone, and you decide where the focus goes. That doesn't mean you dominate. It means you lead. And in a world where most people are content to let others lead the dialogue, the person who can articulate with clarity becomes the natural authority in any room. What many don't realize is that articulation also sharpens your ability to think strategically, because when you train yourself to speak clearly, you force your mind to filter out distractions. You begin to see what matters and what doesn't. You begin to prioritize the core over the noise. And when your mind becomes sharper in conversation, it becomes sharper in decision-making as well. The discipline of articulation spills over into every part of your life, making you more deliberate, more precise, and more effective in everything you do. Think about this. The most successful leaders in history were not always the smartest in the room, nor the strongest, nor even the most experienced, but they were the clearest. They could take a vision and communicate it so plainly, so powerfully, that others were compelled to follow. That's not luck. That's articulation. The ability to frame a vision in words that ignite action is the difference between an idea that dies in silence and an idea that changes the world, and that ability is available to anyone who chooses to master it. But you must be willing to pay attention to the details most people overlook. The choice of a single word can change the entire meaning of a message. The timing of a pause can shift the weight of a point. The way you emphasize a phrase can either dull it or make it unforgettable. To be articulate is to treat your words as instruments, not random sounds. It's to craft your message with care, the way a sculptor shapes stone. It takes patience, awareness, and deliberate practice, but the result is a voice that carries strength and clarity wherever you go. A crucial part of articulation is removing self-sabotage. Too often, people undercut their own words without realizing it. They say, "This might sound silly, but," or "I'm not really an expert, but," or "Maybe I'm wrong, but." Each of those phrases weakens the message before it even begins. They tell the listener not to take you seriously. An articulate communicator never does that. They own their words. They don't pre-apologize for their thoughts. They don't dilute their authority. Instead, they present their message directly without undercutting it, because when you respect your own words, others will too. Another part of articulation is rhythm and variety. If you speak in the same tone, same pace, same structure every time, you will lose people no matter how clear your words are. But when you vary your delivery, speeding up when building energy, slowing down when emphasizing a point, shifting your tone to highlight emotion, you create texture. That texture keeps people engaged. It makes your message feel alive, not mechanical. The best communicators are like musicians. They don't just play one note, they create a melody that captures attention and holds it until the very end. But beyond the techniques, articulation requires presence. If your mind is scattered, if you're half distracted, if you're not fully in the moment, your words will reflect that. Presence means being fully engaged, fully committed to the conversation in front of you. It means giving your listener the sense that nothing else matters except this exchange right now. When you bring that level of presence, people feel valued. And when people feel valued, they listen more deeply. They open themselves to your message. Presence is articulation without words. It's the foundation that makes your words powerful when they finally come. Clarity also demands that you know your own values. If you're unsure of what you stand for, your words will always be shaky. But when your values are clear, your articulation gains a kind of unshakable confidence. You no longer search for approval in every sentence. You no longer bend your words to please everyone. You speak from conviction, and conviction is contagious. Even if people disagree, they cannot ignore someone who speaks with conviction. Your clarity inspires them to find their own. Consider how this plays out in conflict. Most people, when challenged, get defensive. They react emotionally, their words scatter, and the conversation spirals into chaos. But the articulate person remains calm. They breathe, they think. They respond with words that are firm yet measured, direct yet controlled. That kind of clarity in conflict doesn't just resolve disputes. It elevates you as the steady anchor in the storm. People begin to trust you not only for your words, but for your ability to remain composed when others cannot. That's when your articulation moves from being just a skill to being a superpower. The discipline of articulation also strengthens your ability to inspire. Inspiration isn't about shouting louder or filling space with grand gestures. It's about using words that hit people where they live. It's about making them feel that you understand them, that you see them, that your words are not abstract but personal. Articulation allows you to bridge the gap between your ideas and their emotions. And when you can bridge that gap, you can ignite something inside them that moves them to action. But none of this happens by accident. It requires daily practice. It requires awareness of how you speak in every setting, formal or casual. It requires listening to yourself, catching your habits, refining your language. It requires pushing yourself to strip away fluff, to be concise, to be deliberate. Over time, that practice builds into mastery. And once you have mastery, you don't need to force articulation. It flows. Your words begin to mirror the sharpness of your thoughts. Your thoughts begin to sharpen through the discipline of articulation, and together they create a voice that cuts through noise like a blade. There's also a deep confidence that comes when you realize you can handle any conversation, no matter how complex, no matter how high pressure, no matter how unexpected. You know you can take a breath, gather your thoughts, and articulate them with clarity. That confidence doesn't just change how others see you, it changes how you see yourself. You no longer fear being misunderstood. You no longer second-guess your voice. You carry yourself differently because you know that when the moment comes, your words will rise to meet it. And that's the ultimate gift of articulation. It doesn't just make you a better communicator, it makes you a stronger version of yourself. Because every time you choose clarity over confusion, precision over vagueness, confidence over hesitation, you are training not just your speech, but your character. You are becoming the kind of person people remember, the kind of person people follow, the kind of person whose words don't just pass through the air but stay, linger, and leave a mark.